99% of motorcycle buyers who walk into a dealership this week will leave with a massive loan on a machine that their local independent mechanic will refuse to touch. Not because the mechanics are lazy, because the owners do not know about the catastrophic design flaws hidden beneath the shiny factory fairings. Today, you will learn 15 motorcycles mechanics refuse to work on, and the exact engineering secrets they know that you do not. Number 1 reveals the specific commuter cruiser that requires you to dismantle the exhaust system just to perform a basic oil change. Let us begin. Number 15. Honda V-Fr 800 VTEC, the valve clearance labyrinth. Starting our countdown at number 15 is a motorcycle celebrated by moto journalists but absolutely despised by service technicians, the Honda V-Fr 800 VTEC. Honda's legendary V4 engine is a bulletproof masterpiece, but in the early 2000s they introduced the variable valve timing and lift electronic control system to this sport tour. This system transitions the engine from utilizing 2 valves per cylinder at low RPMs to 4 valves at higher RPMs. Mechanics dread this motorcycle because the mechanical packaging inside the cylinder head is an absolute labyrinth. A standard valve clearance check requires specialized slide pins, locking pins, and a masterclass in patience. You cannot slide a feeler gauge under the cam lobes. You have to lock the VTEC spring buckets into a fixed position using a Honda-specific toolkit just to take a baseline measurement. If the valves need adjusting, the intricate camshafts must be completely removed. The nightmare repair is the VTEC valve clearance check and adjustment, requiring 8 to 10 hours of specialized labor. Mechanics charge roughly $1,200 just for standard maintenance. The known failure point is the cam chain tensioner, which frequently fails around 20,000 miles and creates a horrible metallic rattling noise. This is structural. You cannot bypass or prevent the complexity of the VTEC cylinder head. Buy it if you are a wealthy purist who loves the V4 exhaust howl. Walk away if you plan to use it as a high-mileage daily commuter. The smarter alternative is the Suzuki SV1000 at $300 a year to maintain. The Honda has a complex top end, but the luxury touring machine waiting at number 14 requires you to split the motorcycle in half. Number 14, BMW K1200 LT, the split-frame disaster. When BMW designed the K1200 LT, they wanted to build a luxury touring barge to dethrone the Honda Goldwing. They built a comfortable highway cruiser, but created a catastrophic service nightmare. The K1200 LT's flying brick engine lies flat on its side, mounted longitudinally in the frame. Accessing the dry clutch requires breaking the motorcycle into 2 separate pieces. Strip off the rear luggage, remove the entire rear subframe, pull out the swing arm, disconnect the paralever suspension, and remove the transmission housing. A job that takes 45 minutes on a Japanese motorcycle takes an entire week on this Bavarian nightmare. The nightmare repair is the dry clutch replacement or rear main seal leak, requiring 12 to 15 hours of labor to split the bike and easily exceeding $2,500. The ABS servo pump routinely fails at 40,000 miles, and the final drive crown bearing is notorious for sudden, catastrophic collapse. The longitudinal engine layout makes clutch access impossible without a total teardown. This is structural. Walk away entirely. Do not accept this motorcycle even if it is given to you for free. The labor bills will bankrupt you. The smarter alternative is the Honda GL 1800 Goldwing at $600 a year. The BMW requires massive disassembly, but the Italian Supermoto at number 13 uses a factory sealant that dissolves in its own oil. Number 13, Aprilia SXV 550, the orange sealant meltdown. The Aprilia SXV 550 is considered the most aggressive, terrifying factory supermoto ever unleashed on the public. It utilizes a tiny, high-revving 549 ccv twin engine shoved into a dirt bike frame, an absolute weapon on the track. But mechanics hide when they see one roll into the service bay. The terror stems from a massive, fatal manufacturing decision. Aprilia assembled the engine case halves using a specific orange chemical sealant. Over thousands of heat cycles, this sealant dissolves into the hot engine oil. Once it fails, the barrier between the cooling system and oiling system vanishes. The engine mixes coolant with oil, creating a milky sludge that instantly destroys the main engine bearings and hydrolocks the pistons. The mechanic must pull the engine, split the cases, and rebuild the bottom end. This nightmare repair requires 15 hours of specialized engine building and upwards of $3,000. The orange case sealant fails around 5,000 to 8,000 miles. The weak starter motor also burns out trying to crank the massive high-compression pistons. This is a fatal factory defect, structural until the engine is rebuilt with the updated black sealant. Buy it only if you are an experienced mechanic building a dedicated track weapon. Walk away if you want a reliable street bike. The smarter alternative is the Suzuki DRZ 400 SM at $200 a year. The Aprilia is chemically flawed, but the American muscle cruiser at number 12 forces you to drop the entire engine just to check the valves. Number 12. Harley-Davidson V-Rod, the Porsche packaging problem. When Harley-Davidson wanted to build a modern high-horsepower drag cruiser, they knew their traditional air-cooled pushrod engines could not deliver the necessary RPMs. So they outsourced the engine design to Porsche. Porsche engineered a stunning, liquid-cooled, dual overhead cam, 60-degree V-twin known as the Revolution engine. It produced massive power, but they packed it into the V-Rod's hydroform frame that it became a mechanic's worst enemy. Mechanics dread the V-Rod because it abandons the easy-to-service nature of a traditional Harley. On a standard Harley, checking the push rods takes 20 minutes. On a V-Rod, checking the overhead cams requires you to unbolt the front motor mounts and rotate the entire engine downward out of the frame just to remove the valve covers. So the packaging is so tight that simple tasks become massive, knuckle-busting ordeals. The nightmare repair is the valve clearance adjustment, requiring 6 to 8 hours spent fighting the frame geometry and a minimum of $1,000. The second gear engagement dogs and shift forks frequently bend and fail around 30,000 miles due to hard launches, and the underseat fuel tank sending unit corrodes. This is purely structural packaging. The frame was designed for aesthetics first and serviceability last. Buy it for the undeniable straight-line speed. Walk away if you prefer doing your own garage maintenance. The smarter alternative is the Yamaha V-Max Generation 2 at $450 a year. The V-Rod requires an engine drop, but the massive British cruiser at number 11 requires pulling the engine just to fix a $5 spring. Number 11. Triumph Rocket. 3. The detent spring disaster. The original Triumph Rocket 3 is a behemoth. It utilizes a massive 2.3-liter longitudinally mounted inline-3 engine, an automotive engine scaled down to fit between two wheels. The torque is staggering, but the transmission design harbors a fatal flaw that makes transmission specialists turn pale. Mechanics refuse to touch the early generation Rocket 3 because of a tiny $5 piece of metal known as the transmission detent spring. This spring provides the tension required to click the transmission into gear. When it snaps, the motorcycle becomes stuck in gear or hits false neutrals. Because of the massive longitudinal engine design, you cannot access the transmission from a side cover. The mechanic must extract the massive 400-pound engine block from the frame, flip it upside down on a heavy-duty workbench, and split the engine cases in half just to replace a $5 spring. This nightmare repair requires 18 hours of grueling, heavy lifting labor and costs $2,800 in labor to replace a $5 part. The detent spring snaps between 15,000 and 25,000 miles. The massive torque also shreds the final drive, splines if not greased with specialized molybdenum paste. This is a structural engineering flaw. A high-wear component was buried in the most inaccessible part of the engine block. Buy it only if you have a massive bank account and want the largest production engine on Earth. Walk away if labor bills terrify you. The smarter alternative is the Honda Valkyrie at $500 a year. If you are finding this breakdown of mechanical disasters helpful, hit that like button right now. It signals the algorithm that you value raw mechanical truth over glossy dealership marketing. The Rocket 3 hides its flaws in the transmission, but the premium adventure bike at number 10 breathes dirt directly into its engine. Number 10, KTM 1190. Adventure, the dust ingestion nightmare. The KTM 1190 Adventure is an aggressive, razor-sharp off-road touring machine. It produces massive horsepower and features strong suspension geometry. However, it harbors a massive engineering oversight that destroys engines and infuriates mechanics. The factory airbox design is compromised. Mechanics dread these bikes because the factory airbox does not seal. Instead of clean air, the engine sucks abrasive sand, silica, and fine trail dust through the gaps. This acts like liquid sandpaper inside the combustion chamber, scoring the cylinder walls and ruining the top end. Checking this airbox requires stripping off the crash bars, fuel tank, and massive amounts of plastic fairings. The nightmare repair is a complete top-end engine rebuild due to silica scoring, requiring 20 hours of intensive labor and easily exceeding $3,500. Airbox seal failure occurs from day one. The undersized starter motor struggles violently when the bike is hot. This is highly preventable but structurally flawed from the factory. Buy it only if you immediately install an aftermarket Rottweiler intake system to fix the factory seal. Walk away if you expect the bike to survive the dessert out of the box. The smarter alternative is the Yamaha Super Tenere 1200, completely bulletproof with shaft drive at $400 a year. The KTM breathes dirt, but the Italian exotic at number 9 has mechanics waiting half a year just for a single bolt. Number 9, MV Agusta F3 800, the supply chain paralysis. The MV Agusta F3 800 is arguably the most beautiful supersport motorcycle ever designed. It handles like a scalpel and sounds like a Formula One car. However, it is a nightmare for independent service shops. The dread does not come from the mechanical complexity. It comes from the absolute paralysis of the Italian supply chain. Mechanics refuse to work on the F3 because a motorcycle cannot sit disassembled on a specialized hydraulic lift for 6 months. When an MV Agusta breaks, ordering specific internal engine parts from Varese, Italy, is a logistical nightmare. The factory is notorious for massive delays, back-ordered parts, and zero communication. A mechanic will tear down an F3 800 to fix a faulty sprag clutch, order the part, and then have to push a dead, disassembled motorcycle into the corner of their shop for half a year, losing valuable floor space and delaying their paycheck. The nightmare repair is the sprag clutch replacement. The physical labor is only 6 hours, but the wait time for Italian parts can exceed 4 months, and the total cost runs around $1,200 plus the agony of waiting. The starter sprag clutch fails around 10,000 miles, and early models suffer from erratic, dangerous ride-by-wire throttle mapping. This is a supply chain and specialized Italian engineering problem. Buy it if you want. Moving art for your living room and own 3 other motorcycles. Walk away if this is your only transport. The smarter alternative is the Triumph Daytona 675R with a functional global parts network at $500 per year. We are past the halfway point, and the disasters only get worse. Subscribe to the channel right now so you never miss a breakdown like this one. MV Agusta suffers from part scarcity, but the legendary German adventure bike at number 8 requires an engine-out procedure just to fix the charging system. Number 8, BMW R1200 GS water-cooled, the rear stator relocation. The BMW R1200 GS is the undisputed king of the global adventure market. For decades, the older air-cooled models were praised for their serviceability. If the alternator belt failed, you could fix it on the side of a dirt road in 20 minutes. Then, from 2013 to 2016, BMW introduced the new liquid-cooled water boxer engine, and they made a packaging decision that horrified mechanics worldwide. In order to make the engine more compact, BMW moved the electrical stator from the front of the engine and buried it completely at the rear of the engine block, sandwiched against the transmission. The stator is a high-heat electrical component that burns out over time. When it fails on the liquid-cooled models, you cannot unbolt a side cover. The mechanic has to remove the massive boxer engine from the frame and split the engine cases from the transmission bell housing just to reach the burnt electrical coil. The nightmare repair is stator replacement, requiring 14 hours and $2,500 for a job that cost $300 on the old models. The stator burns out between 30,000 and 40,000 miles, and the drive shaft splines rust solid if not lubricated during tire changes. BMW sacrificed serviceability for center of gravity. Pure structural packaging. By the 2017 and newer models, where BMW improved the thermal management. Walk away from high-mileage 2013 to 2015 models unless the stator has already been replaced with the updated part. The smarter alternative is the Honda Africa Twin, which features reliable Japanese electrical systems and costs $450 a year to maintain. BMW buried the stator, but the American sport bike at number 7 runs so hot it boils its own fuel. Number 7. Buell 1125R, the thermal meltdown. Eric Buell was an eccentric engineer who wanted to build a world-beating American sport bike. To achieve the massive horsepower required, he abandoned the air-cooled Harley engines and partnered with Rotax in Austria to build a liquid-cooled 146-horsepower V-twin known as the Helicon engine. He packed this massive engine into the tight Buell frame. The result was a thermal disaster. Mechanics dread the Buell because the motorcycle cannot shed heat. The exhaust headers are packed so tightly against the aluminum frame, which serves as the fuel tank, that the bike literally boils the gasoline inside the frame during slow traffic. Worse, the charging system rotor is not cooled by the engine oil. The trapped heat scorches the electrical stator, melting the copper windings and leaving the rider stranded with a dead battery. Mechanics hate fixing it because replacement stators inevitably burn out again 10,000 miles later. Harley-Davidson killed the Buell brand entirely, making replacement parts scarce. The nightmare repair is continuous stator and rotor replacement, requiring 5 hours of labor and custom-machined aftermarket cooling jets, costing $800 and recurring every 10,000 miles. The clutch slave cylinder weeps hydraulic fluid at 15,000 miles due to extreme engine heat. Structural thermal failure. Walk away unless you are a dedicated collector of rare American racing history. The smarter alternative is the Suzuki TL1000R or SV1000, which provide massive V-twin torque without boiling your inner thighs at roughly $300 a year to run. The Buell boils its own fuel, but the legendary touring machine at number 6 requires you to disassemble a living room just to change a basic filter. Number 6. Honda GL 1800 Goldwing, the plastic puzzle. This entry surprises many people because the flat-six engine inside the Honda Goldwing is considered the most reliable, indestructible motorcycle engine on Earth. It will cross 300,000 miles without a rebuild, but mechanics actively avoid taking Goldwings into their service bays. The dread does not come from the engine. It comes from the acres of overlapping, fragile plastic fairings. To replace the air filter on a Goldwing from 2001 through 2017, the mechanic cannot just pop a side panel. They must remove the massive seat, extract the dashboard, unbolt the entire top shoulder, disconnect radio and navigation wiring harnesses, and track over 40 hidden plastic clips. A job that takes 5 minutes on a standard naked bike requires removing the entire top half of the motorcycle. Mechanics hate it because if they snap one single, aged, brittle plastic tab during this multi-hour process, the customer will demand a massive, expensive replacement panel. The nightmare repair is the engine air filter replacement, requiring 3 hours of meticulous, frustrating plastic removal and $400 in labor to replace a simple $20 paper filter. The alternator-driven gear fails on early 2001 to 2005 models, requiring a massive engine-out split costing over $3,000. Ghost shifting in the transmission is also common. This is structural packaging. Buy it. It is the greatest touring motorcycle ever built. Accept the labor tax and enjoy. The smarter alternative is the Yamaha FJR 1300 at $350 per year. The Gold Wing is a plastic maze, but the Italian Cruiser at number 5 features an internal engine flaw that turns its camshafts into metal powder. Number 5, Moto Guzzi Griso 1208 valve, the flat tappet destruction. The Moto Guzzi Griso is a stunning, muscular Italian street fighter. It features a massive transverse V-twin engine jutting out from the sides of the frame. In 2007, Moto Guzzi introduced the new 8-valve engine to increase horsepower. To operate the 4 valves per cylinder, they utilized traditional flat tappets. This metallurgical decision resulted in one of the most infamous, catastrophic engine failures in modern motorcycling history. Mechanics dread the early Griso 1200 because the factory flat tappets were manufactured with improper surface hardening. Due to the aggressive camshaft profile, the flat tappets lacked proper lubrication at low RPMs. They degraded, grinding against the camshafts. Within 15,000 miles, the tappets disintegrated, sending highly abrasive metallic paste directly into the oiling system, destroying the main bearings, scoring the cylinder walls, and causing total engine failure. The nightmare repair is the rollerization conversion. Mechanics must remove the cylinder heads, install the updated roller tappet kit, install new camshafts, and flush the entire engine block to remove the metallic sludge. This requires 10 hours of labor and costs $2,500. Total flat tappet disintegration occurs between 12,000 and 20,000 miles. This is a massive factory engineering flaw. The original metallurgy was insufficient for the cam profile. Buy it only if the seller has a receipt proving the engine was successfully rollerized. Walk away instantly if it still has the original flat tappets. The smarter alternative is the BMW R9T with a bulletproof boxer engine at $700 per year. If you are tired of the motorcycle industry hiding these catastrophic engineering flaws, hit that subscribe button right now to protect your wallet. The Moto Guzzi grinds its own cams, but the ultra-premium superbike at number 4 completely eliminates the traditional motorcycle frame. Number 4, Ducati Panigale 1199, the monocoque maze. When Ducati engineered the Panigale, they abandoned their iconic steel trellis frame entirely. In the revolutionary monocoque chassis, the Super Quattro V twin engine is the structural frame. The steering head bolts to the front cylinder, the swing arm bolts to the engine cases. An engineering marvel that won championships. An absolute nightmare for a service technician. Mechanics dread the Panigale because routine maintenance requires dismantling the entire structural integrity of the motorcycle. Ducati engines require strict desmodromic valve clearance checks. To access the rear cylinder head, the mechanic has to unbolt the rear subframe, the exhaust headers, the shock linkages, and tightly packed electronics. Because the engine is the frame, there is absolutely zero room to maneuver wrenches or feeler gauges. The nightmare repair is the Desmo valve service, requiring 10 to 12 hours of surgical labor and costing $1,500 to $2,000 at an independent specialist. The exhaust flapper valve seizes from extreme heat. The rear cylinder exhaust header runs hot enough to boil the rear brake fluid, causing total loss of rear braking power. This is structural packaging. The monocoque design prioritizes lap times over serviceability. Buy it if you want the most visceral, aggressive track weapon ever created. Walk away if you are on a tight budget. The smarter alternative is the Yamaha ZFR1 at $600 per year. The Ducati is an inaccessible race bike, but the massive Japanese muscle cruiser at number 3 literally tears its own transmission apart. Number 3. Suzuki Boulevard M 109R, the clutch basket explosion. The Suzuki Boulevard M 109R was built for one specific purpose: to dominate straight-line drag races against Harley-Davidsons. It features a massive 109 cubic inch 1007 183cc V-twin engine producing staggering raw, low-end torque. It is a stunning muscular machine, but that massive torque exposes a critical, fatal weakness in the drivetrain architecture. Mechanics dread seeing the M109R roll into the shop because of its infamous clutch shudder. Suzuki engineered a clutch basket completely insufficient to handle the brutal twisting force of the massive 112mm pistons. Hard launches from a stoplight violently rip at the internal springs and rivets of the clutch basket. The basket warps, creating a terrifying shuddering sensation when pulling away from a stop. If ignored, the basket will completely explode, sending heavy shrapnel into the transmission, bending the internal shift forks, and destroying second gear. The nightmare repair is clutch basket replacement and second gear shift fork rebuild. Mechanics hate this job because the motorcycle weighs 764 pounds, making it difficult to maneuver on a lift. It requires 12 hours of heavy labor and costs $2,000. Clutch shudder appears as early as 15,000 miles. This is structural weakness. The factory clutch basket metallurgy cannot sustain the engine's power output. Buy it only if you immediately upgrade the clutch basket with a heavy-duty billet unit. Walk away if you want to dump the clutch aggressively. The smarter alternative is the Yamaha Raider 1900 with a bulletproof transmission at $400 per year. The Suzuki shreds its own gears, but the bizarre Italian exotic at number 2 places a massive radiator directly beneath the rider's seat. Number 2. Benelli Tornado Tre 900, the thermal madness. The Benelli Tornado Tre 900 is one of the most bizarre, visually striking sport bikes ever produced. Designed in the early 2000s, it features a massive inline-3 engine. To narrow the front profile for aerodynamic efficiency, the Italian engineers made an insane packaging decision. They moved the cooling radiator from the front of the engine and placed it directly underneath the rider's seat, cooled by twin yellow extractor fans. Mechanics absolutely refuse to work on the Tornado Tre because the entire thermodynamic ecosystem of the motorcycle is broken. Routing massive hot coolant hoses the full length of the motorcycle means the bike cannot cool itself in slow traffic. It overheats relentlessly. This trapped heat melts the fragile Italian wiring harness, and electrical shorts plague the fuel injection system. Worse, the company went bankrupt, meaning replacement parts are virtually non-existent. A mechanic will spend weeks trying to trace a melted wire without a proper schematic. The nightmare repair is tracing electrical shorts in a melted, undocumented wiring harness, requiring unlimited hours of frustrating electrical diagnostics and essentially a blank check. The alternator shaft snaps at 10,000 miles. Severe overheating destroys the radiator fan motors. This is pure structural insanity. The underseat radiator design is a thermal impossibility for street riding. Walk away. Run away. Never purchase this motorcycle unless it is sitting permanently as a museum sculpture. The smarter alternative is the Triumph Daytona 955i at $600 per year. The Benelli is a thermal nightmare, but the absolute worst threat to your wallet sits at number 1. It is a common, affordable cruiser that hides an enraging, expensive secret behind its exhaust pipe. Number 1. Yamaha V-Star 1100, the exhaust pipe trap. Reaching the summit of our mechanical breakdown, we expose a motorcycle that looks simple, is affordable, and is recommended to beginner cruiser riders. The Yamaha V-Star 1100 is an air-cooled Japanese V-twin. It should be the easiest motorcycle on earth to maintain, but it harbors an enraging factory design flaw that makes independent mechanics charge double just to see it roll into the shop. The dread comes from the absolute most basic maintenance task in existence: the oil filter change. On 99% of motorcycles, you simply spin the oil filter off the front of the engine block. On the V-Star 1100, Yamaha engineers place the oil filter cover directly behind the massive thick front exhaust header pipe. You cannot remove the oil filter cover without unbolting and dropping the entire front exhaust system. This turns a 10-minute oil change into a high-risk mechanical operation. The exhaust stud nuts, exposed to extreme heat and weather, frequently rust solid to the cylinder head. When the mechanic applies force to unbolt the exhaust just to change the oil, the brittle steel studs snap off flush inside the aluminum cylinder head. Now the mechanic has to use a specialized drill and an easied-out extractor to remove a broken steel bolt from a soft aluminum engine block. A $30 oil change becomes a stressful machining operation. The nightmare repair is a basic oil change escalating into broken exhaust stud extraction, requiring 3 hours of stressful drilling and tapping and costing $600. The starter clutch fails at 20,000 miles if the rider gives throttle while pressing the starter button, requiring a massive engine cover teardown. Structural packaging flaw. Placing a routine maintenance item behind a high heat fixture is a catastrophic design choice. Buy it only if you install an aftermarket oil filter relocation kit immediately. Walk away if it is stock and the exhaust studs are heavily rusted. The smarter alternatives are the Honda VTEC 1300 or the Kawasaki Vulcan 900, both with accessible oil filters for $200 per year. The motorcycle industry relies on aesthetic appeal and massive torque numbers to sell you machines that are fundamentally broken at the drafting table. They bury routine maintenance items behind massive fairings, complex frame structures, and structural exhaust pipes to ensure you remain trapped in the expensive, high-margin dealership service ecosystem. Continue the ride and click on the next video. And don't forget to subscribe and like this video.